what we'll see when we get 10% of the world at integral.
We're evolving towards a 10% integral moment in time at some point in our future. You said that that is the biggest transformation that we'll ever see on the planet, right? Like that is, the people that were writing about paradigms in green, your friends that are writing books, they thought that that was it, but actually it's really this leap to second tier, right? So maybe you answer that second part first, like are we going to make it? But what does it actually mean? Like, what does the world look like, at when we are all at this integral level of development? We've made it, we've evolved to that point, and the structures of our world are integrated, the governments, the politics, the economics somehow are now resonating with this new mental model that is now established across the board, right? Do you have any idea what that looks like? Like, how do things change? Is it an end to war on the planet, right? Is it the dissolving of, economic, challenges that we have? What does it look like?
Well, this is a particularly difficult question to answer, as you can imagine. But one of the reasons is because of the nature of development itself. So when we say that we're some 50%, 60% of the population is at a rational stage of development, that doesn't mean that the entire world is rational. It's still arguments between reason, science, and religion, for example. And because the stages of development are like that, in other words, nobody's ever going to be 100% at an integral stage of development, because everybody's born at square one. And they have to develop through all of these stages of development. And what we find is that you leave a little bit of the subject behind at every stage of development, just because nobody's perfect at being 100% at the archaic stage and then going 100% to the magic stage, then 100% at the mythic stage. No. By the time they're rational, at least 50% of them reaches rational. 50% of them, as it's still, they've got subjects left at mythic, magic, and archaic stages of development. And so what we'll see when we get 10% of the world at integral is the starting of integral ideas being accepted or suffused. There will be a very large awareness of what that means. And the same way as when 10% of humanity hit the rational level during the Enlightenment, that meant that not everybody became rational just because it was called the Age of Reason. The Age of Reason represented the leading edge of thought at that time was rational, because more than 10% of the population was at a rational stage. And they knew that when they were operating from that rational stage, they were being the best that they could be. And generally people know that. Whenever you're at your leading edge, even if you can't describe it, whenever you're operating from that leading edge, you'll feel better about yourself. You'll know, I was being myself. And then when you're not, when you're operating from some lower level, you go, I wasn't myself that day, or I fell out of it or something. So we have to just remember, because of the nature of development itself, that when we get 10% of the population at integral, it'll have some of those kinds of effects, but it won't be miraculous. Everybody's at the stage of integral. Just as when we went through the Age of Reason, it didn't mean 100% of the population was operating from reason.
Of course.
But every historian recognizes that as a period when reason first came to the fore, so much so that they call it the Age of Reason. And they can trace a lot of the good things that came out of that period, which was coming from the rational stage itself, including outlawing slavery and discovering all the modern sciences.
Right, but also, you said before, right? The next jump, 1959, 3%, 1972, 15%. That's not that many years, right? And we see the effect, right? Like the whole green movement, we got to save the planet, kind of started in that time, right? Yeah. So we can see, even in our recent history, a short period of time where we saw some stuff happen.
Oh yeah.
I'm just curious, like, when you think about this, like, what would it look like for integral to get to 10%, let's say over a 15-year phase? What would that look like?
Well, what you can mostly think about is what happens when 15 or 20% of the population is at integral.
Fair enough.
And it'll sound like just an intellectual explanation, but that's because I'm putting it in intellectual terms. You can just think that the same way we have with 23% of the population at postmodern, we call this a postmodern age. But that's still only 2 out of 10 operating from that stage. Right. But you can think about, nonetheless, it can have an extremely important influence. And especially when it's coming from a leading edge of evolution, which the green for a long time was. Now, by any means, leading edge, because that's the stage that's at the upper limits at 8% of the population. And so it's only got 2% to go till it gets to 10%. And we have that tipping point, which will, well, historians looking back on that era will probably call it the integral age. And by the way, just the phrase integral age is a very common phrase that I'm seeing in a lot of academic writing right now, particularly since the people that recognize what will be integral age coming are people that are already, like the last time I saw the term integral age used was somebody who was already integrating the various schools of sociology. So they're already at an integral stage themselves, and therefore thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow. So you can simply think about an integral age as you think about the postmodern stage today, and how much of the world you really find to be postmodern, and how much, if you really look carefully, is not so much postmodern. And you know that almost every single religion in the world disagrees with postmodernism, and many rational people disagree with postmodernism, but it's still referred to as a postmodern age. And we still recognize the culture wars as being an intrinsic part of this culture age, and also some of the negatives, like the retribalization or polarization of this country. So whatever the downsides of integral will be, because there's always been a downside of every major stage in existence, including the downside of rationality, which did intend to be, particularly when it became rationality as scientific materialism, became a very reductionistic approach. And we spent a lot of the time talking about the downsides of postmodernity. The downsides of integral could be that because, among other things, integral will be introspecting and recognizing all these stages of growing up in itself. It might, if its ego also got large, it could start judging people on where they are in overall growing up. I mean, you can see certain people, I notice this every now and then when the very rare times that I actually visit an integral site and look at what the people are doing. One of the tendencies, if there's a sin, is people are judging often other people on the very site. Well, you're not at an integral stage like I am. And that will be, I suppose that'll be one of the most popular forms among egotists during the integral age.